Welcome to the Scoop World Order. A little bit of a late night edition today. I had Nevadabuck hit me up, said we got some stuff to talk about. Let's knock this out. So it's slightly after midnight, but we're here rocking for the Scoop fam. Nevada, how are you tonight?
Great, great. Been a great day, busy day. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day, so definitely lots to talk about.
Yeah, we got a new recruit coming on board pretty quick here. We've got a documentary that's coming out on Monday. We're gonna have a big outing with the Scoop family, and we open it up to people that aren't part of the Scoop family to come on next Monday at the Lenox Theater. Well, it's now the Phoenix. It used to be the Lenox forever and ever. Tickets are available on our website. You go to the pay it forward link. Also, you can send me an email, barton.145@gmail.com. If you guys need help getting tickets, we've sold a ton. We've probably got maybe 50 left. So, people that want to get in, you better get in quick because it's going to sell out fast. But we're having a blast, and I think it's going to be a really fun night. The whole staff's going to be there. We're going to do a Q&A. We're going to answer questions. Nevada's actually flying out for it. So all you people that have been dying to meet Nevadabuck for 20 years, this is your chance. He's going to be there. So it's going to be a spectacular night. So we're just going to go through some musings of what's going on right now with the team. And they just broke camp this past Saturday, which is always kind of a seminal moment for a football team breaking training camp. It's an exciting moment. It's probably the best day of the year for a football player just because camp is literally the worst time of the year. So it's like it's like that light at the end of the tunnel. You actually get to go home, live in your apartment again, not be under a curfew. There's a lot of benefits to breaking camp, but there were some big time movers. Some guys' stock really raised up during camp. Nevadabuck, what have you heard from your people in camp? Who has made some dramatic risings, and maybe it's some names that people haven't heard as much about, and some are just going to be superstars that have taken that next level?
Yeah, well, I think that I'll start at the running back position because that's a position that we've talked a lot about. We've talked a lot about the fabulous freshman Trey Henderson and how we can't wait to see him. But when they line it up for the first time and kick it off, I think it's going to be Mayan Williams. Chop is going to be the guy that's going to be starting there, and he has had an absolutely terrific spring, summer, and then fall camp. And we saw little glimpses of it last year. We've been talking about him before people had ever seen him on the field, and we were saying, "Hey, this guy's tearing it up in practice." And I think people were scoffing that this 3-star, probably the lowest ranked guy in that recruiting class, could be doing something like that. But he's really good. He's in tremendous shape. He's just been balling out all fall camp, and I think he's locked down the number one running back spot. He's legit. He's the guy that's going to get carries. It's not symbolic. It's not anything that they're doing because he's a great teammate. They're doing it because he's a great player, and that's certainly been a big surprise to me. The fact that he's locked it down so thoroughly. Now, again, I'm still picking Trey Henderson to bust off a 50-yard touchdown play in the first game of the season. So I'm equally excited about both of them behind this offensive line. But that's been one of the big surprises. That's something that's kind of emerged here in the last few days, where he's kind of locked down that number one position, and he's a guy I can't wait to see.
Yeah, I think there's almost immeasurable number of stories we could talk about. I mean, you can talk about the emergence of Kyle McCord as the likely backup quarterback as a true freshman, winning that competition, which was very fierce. That's the big deal. For me, it's got to be DeWand, starting a tackle. Because, I mean, if you would have set, Las Vegas style odds that one of our starting tackles, would be not Thayer, not Nick Petit, nobody would have taken those odds. But DeWant, through the overall leadership of Thayer Munford, to realize that, hey, if I move into left guard, this helps the team. It might, I don't want to say it hurt your ego, but left tackle's that spot, and that's the spot that every kid wants to play. It's the premium spot in the NFL. He held that down for 3 years. He'd have been a 4-year start at left tackle. For him to be selfless enough to move to guard, frankly, I don't know if I could have done that, because when you're playing at a really high level at something, it's like if you're a great goaltender, like, do you want to go play forward and being risk not being, if you're the number one goalie in the world and you want to go play forward and you're not the number one forward in the world, like, is it it's a tough move, and he is doing that because he's a massive human. He's a freak of nature. He's a guy that moves people, in the running game. And him and Paris Johnson is as talented of a side as there is in the country. You have two guys that potentially could both be first round picks, second round picks, on the right. And on the left side, you have guys that could be, I think Nick Petit's a first rounder. I think it could go anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4, depending on, his health is his big question because he's had the back stuff. But he was back at it today. I was at practice today. He looked great. He's in good spirits. I talked to, I always give all those guys some love to say, hey guys, I'm rooting for you if you ever need anything, whatever. But they're just they're a physically menacing group, and I'm excited to watch those guys. What about defensively, Nevada? Have you heard anything defensively? That's the big bugaboo with most of our fan bases. Are worried about the defense, are worried about last year or the worst scoring defense in school history. I don't give coaches and players a pass, but with COVID, with no training camp, no spring ball, a limited training camp, those guys physically, I don't think we're ready to play, and it showed. That's why I felt like points were up, because it's easier to play offense than defense nowadays with the penalties and how the game's manufactured. But then you throw in the lack of conditioning for the defense, and it's really easy to play offense, which is why Alabama was scoring a lot or giving up more than they've ever given up, and so was everybody else across the board. But what are you hearing defensively? Is this going to get fixed? And who are the coaches and the players that are going to be part of the turnaround?
Well, I think the thing that's really been kind of a recent emergence, and I'd say maybe in the last week to 10 days, has been kind of the emergence of the young defensive backs for Ohio State defensively. You're hearing more and more about Denzel Burke, and you're hearing more and more about Jordan Hancock and Jalen Johnson. And, I think that's really been one of the big stories to me, is watching those guys come on like they have. They came in highly touted. We knew that we had some spots that were open. Demario McCall's been a great story, with this help. But I think the emergence of the young defensive backs, to me, has been really the pleasant surprise of the fall camp, and how well they've been playing as of late. And, I think we've had a big question about that, but I think the question, it won't be fully answered until we get game time. But I think from a coaching standpoint, Ohio State's about as happy as they could possibly be with those guys, because they've been terrific. And, they started the fall camp a little slow. And I think, like I said, the last week and a half, they've really, really played well. And they're starting to play with confidence and swagger back there, which you need to be a defensive back at Ohio State and to play at the highest levels. But you can see it, because they're getting better every day. And you can watch them. Before, the wide receivers for Ohio State were kind of turning them around, and now the battles are getting a little bit more even against this elite Ohio State wide receiving core, and that's good news for Ohio State. That's good news for this year, and it's good news for beyond. And to me, that would be the story for the defense for this fall camp.
Yeah, it's going to be impressive to watch. I think the defensive line's taken a step. I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste has had an outstanding camp. I think he's more of a third starter. Obviously it's going to be Zach and Tyreek to open it up most games, but I think he's moved into their realm where he's that, like, literally he could be a starter opposite Zach Harrison, and nobody would really blink. I think that Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau showing up, obviously lights a fire under guys that are older. They don't want to get passed up by a freshman, and those guys are as ferocious of two guys in terms of how they work, and how Jack Sawyer is already a legend in the weight room with how he works. And it's one of those things that's going to be really fascinating to see how they rotate these guys. I think it's a great problem to have, because I think D linemen, know that if they don't have to play 50 snaps, they can be more effective playing 35. They can be fresher. They can run to the ball better. They can play with better effort. I think that's where you really get, more output from your pass rushers. And I think having the depth on the D line is going to be very helpful. I think that, they got to sort out corner. I think they're going to play a lot of guys in the first game, see who grades out well in the first game. It's not it's not like you're playing Olave and Garrett Wilson week one. Like, they've been playing against those guys all camp. So when they play Minnesota, it's going to be like a joke, because those guys are nowhere near what Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are. And not even Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I mean, we just have unbelievable depth in that wide receiver room. And it's going to be interesting to see how they do um, against, another team. And Minnesota's receivers might be the worst in the Big Ten. So it's really going to be a nice place to roll some guys through. But in the back end, people are worried about the secondaries as well. I think, between Lathan playing up, you've got Young, you've got Josh Proctor. I think you've got some guys back there that physically can do it. And Matt Barnes taking over the secondary and letting Kerry walk around, I think could be really Kerry Combs letting him walk around. Hopefully we'll get that unit more synergized and there's less blown assignments and higher level of performance. But that's what everyone's dying to see next Thursday. So from there, we got Minnesota next Thursday. What are you expecting to see against the Gophers?
Well, I'm still a little concerned. I think you hit it on the head that, Minnesota's not going to be able to throw the ball on us, but Minnesota can run it. And, I like the running back a lot. I like him a lot. Mm-hmm. I thought, he was terrific in the bowl game last year. I remember watching him and thinking, boy, I hope this guy goes to the NFL because he's a heck of a player. And I running behind that big offensive line. I think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to test Ohio State right off the bat to see if they can hold the point of attack. If they can slow down that Minnesota running game. And I'm expecting it to be a little closer than we want through the half. Then Ohio State pulls away in the second half. I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I'm hoping it's just blowout city and that our talent rises right to the top. But I think it's going to be one of those games where Ohio State's going to come out and they're going to try to establish the run and then try to be opportunistic with CJ Stroud. Put him in the rocking chair and hit some big plays like they've been doing all fall camp. So it's going to be. I can't wait. I can't remember being this excited for an opener in a very long time. I'm excited every year for Ohio State football, but especially for this team. I just have a really good feeling about the squad on both sides and so many young players that we're waiting to see. It's going to be like Christmas here in 10 days. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's always exciting. I mean, it's exciting and unnerving at the same time when you have a new quarterback, who's never played a meaningful down. You have new faces on defense, specifically at linebacker. You got to find out who the second corner is behind Seven Banks. And just when you get this new influx of young talent with, what's Jack Sawyer going to do? What's Trey Henderson going to do? Like we saw what these guys did in the spring game. What are they going to do in a real game? So that's always an interesting thing that I think people are excited about. I mean, people, we know our lifeblood is people love recruiting. They love these kids that are superstars in high school and they want to see how it translates to Ohio State. So next Thursday, if we get after these guys like we should, hopefully we can empty the bench a little bit. We can get more of the young guys in the game. Get I'm sure JT is going to have a role coming off the edge. I could see him playing some early down work just because he's a big kid and he's a big physical edge guy against a running team. It makes sense. So it'll be it's going to be fascinating to see kind of the roles that they've carved out for these young guys early on in the season, and then see how they evolve as the season progresses week over week. See what guys grade out as champions after week one. See how that affects their playing time, see what guys maybe didn't grade out as champions, see how that affects their playing time, if they get less time or they get removed as starters or switched out as starters. So, the thing that's interesting about Minnesota, and Ryan Day said this, and anyone that's played football knows this, is just because you're starting week one doesn't mean you're the starter. The guy that's in general the starter in my mind is the guy that starts the most games throughout the season. And a lot of guys that start week one usually don't start by week 4 or 5. It shakes out and they either don't perform or the guys get hurt. And there's guys that got to step in and take advantage of their opportunities. So one thing that you have been at the absolute forefront of is the expansion talks between the SEC, Texas, Oklahoma. How's the Big Ten going to strike back? The Big Ten has generally been inept in every facet when it comes to this. But tell me a little bit about what you're hearing. There's a rumor there's a big announcement tomorrow. But tell me a little bit about what you're hearing about tomorrow.
Yeah, I think tomorrow you're going to get a glimpse of this alliance that between the Big Ten, the Pac-12, I guess, and the ACC, and it's primarily a scheduling alliance. Think of it that, almost like the Notre Dame USC game where they play every year, and they're going to try to line up teams, based upon the preseason rankings, almost like the Big Ten ACC Challenge in basketball, and have them schedule games and things like that. But from the people that I talked to on the broadcast side, there's like, look, this is step one in about a 10-step process. That they're excited about, just from a standpoint of that. There's if you think about the targets for the Big Ten, the targets for the Big Ten are these large state institutions. The places that the dominant places like UNC, like Virginia, like Oregon, like USC, like Colorado. And so you're getting a lot of these schools together as part of this scheduling alliance. And this is definitely not the end of the story, but it's the first step in terms of doing it. And then I'm of the opinion that frankly there's not going to be much to this, but directionally I like the fact that you've got the like-minded schools all getting together in one way, shape, or form now. And I think this will lead down the road to kind of that expansion super conference thing that we've all been looking for, that we all think is the next natural progression of this. But the fact that they all came together, notice how this isn't being done with the Big 12. This is being, because none of those Big 12 schools fit. But Pac-12, ACC, they fit. So, like I said, I think of this as stage one of a larger expansion plan. So it'll be interesting to see it and read about the details tomorrow. So I can't wait.
What's the end game? What's stage 10 look like? If you're, in that upper level meeting that I know you've sat in and been a part of, what's stage 10 look like?
Well, I think stage 10 is, eventually you're going to, I think there's going to, the ultimate end game is there's going to be almost like an AFC, NFC, or AFL, NFL type of setup where you've got the ACC, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten on one side, and the SEC and the Big 12 and whomever's left over on the other side. And, those two, powerhouses kind of, fight it out. And I think that's ultimately where this thing's headed for. And it makes sense, to have like-minded schools together. And, I think at the end of the day, the NCAA is going to be out of the administration of college football, and the administration is going to be, with the powers that be. And, the biggest dogs in college football are Ohio State and Alabama, and they're going to be, the standard bearers for their respective conferences, and they're going to get after it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be humongous, and that's where we're heading, man. I mean, we got to do something to compete with the SEC, because they just literally took the two flagship institutions of the Big 12 from right under our noses, and you got to give them credit, man. They're not scared. They make moves, and usually we're the ones that are always reacting to what the SEC does, which I absolutely hate. It was like last year when we're calling off the season and whole world's ending, and the SEC is like, no, we're gonna keep on playing. It just means more. We're gonna, and me and you laughed about that, but we're like, watch, they're not gonna stop playing. Are you crazy? Like, they have the golden opportunity to be the only show in town and get all the TV revenue. Like, oh my god, like, why would you ever stop? Like, for what? And we laughed about that. Well, parting shots, you got anything just to close this thing out? This is a great episode per usual, and anything for the rest of the week, leading into Saturday, and then next week's game week. But anything you got to send our folks off with?
Yeah, no, I just think this last week, Ohio State's going to be really in heavy mode, game prep mode for Minnesota. And I think what's going to be interesting to see is, to talk to the people and find out how they plan to attack the Gophers. And I'd like to see, lots of guys play. That's the most exciting thing to me, is when you see these young guys get out there in the field and play, and what they can do. And it'll be interesting to see how Coach Day's got some interesting ways to do that, whether it be rolling out a second line, liberal substitution on the defensive side, or some creative ways to do it on the special teams game. But I think Ohio State fans will be pleased, because I think he's got some tricks rolled up in his sleeve there that are they're going to be interesting for people to watch when they kick it off in 10 days.
Well, let's get it, man. I'm closing it down. Let's see you next Sunday. It's almost here, man. We're gonna have a big week on the scoop, and appreciate all you people that support us. It's time to get on the message boards right now. So Nevadabuck and I will see you guys on the boards.